The wind cut across the dusty main street of Dry Creek as 22-year-old Colt Jamison swung down from his horse, brushing trail dust from his jacket. He'd ridden 3 days straight looking for work, a purpose, maybe even a reputation. What he had expected was trouble waiting for him before he even set foot inside the saloon. Old Henry Tate sat outside the general store, leaning on a cane carved from juniper wood, his weathered Winchester resting across his knees. The rifle was so rusted and dull, it looked ready to crumble into dust. Several boys snickered at it as they passed. One of them broad-shouldered, loud, eager to impress, loud enough for half the street to hear. "Careful with that relic, old man," he shouted. "That rusty stick ever fire a bullet in its life?" The men near the hitching post chuckled. Colt smirked too. He didn't mean to, but the sight was odd. The Winchester so old, it belonged in a museum. Henry's pale blue eyes lifted, calm as a still pond. "Son," he said quietly, "this rifle's killed 45 men." Colt blinked, unsure if the old man was joking. But Henry didn't smile, didn't move, didn't even flinch. And for some reason Colt couldn't explain, the hair on the back of his neck rose. Inside the saloon, talk buzzed like flies again. Colt found a corner table and nursed a cup of weak coffee, watching the door, watching the old man outside through the window. Something about Henry Tate pulled at him, something old, wounded, and dangerous. Colt didn't know it yet, but before night fell, that rusty Winchester would decide whether he lived or died. Colt hadn't come to Dry Creek to get tangled in anyone's business. He'd run from enough of his own, his father drinking himself into the grave, his mother dying too young, his younger brother looking at him with disappointment every time Colt left home instead of staying to help. He wanted to find work, maybe security, maybe redemption. But trouble had a way of finding men who carried guilt in their saddlebags. Around noon, a stagecoach barreled into town. Horses lathered. Driver panicked. "Bandits," he shouted. "They're coming this way, the Crowe Brothers." 5 of them. The saloon emptied in seconds, men scrambling, some running, some hiding, others preparing to fight. Colt stood in the doorway, pulse quickening. He'd heard of the Crows, ruthless, eager for blood, famous for shooting first and taking valuables later. Sheriff Wilcox yelled orders, but his voice trembled. "Board up windows! Get women and kids inside!" Then he spotted Colt. "Any good with a gun?" Colt hesitated, his hand brushing the pistol at his hip. He could shoot, sure. But more often than not, he froze when the moment came. The hesitation, the fear had cost him a friend years ago, and he'd never forgiven himself. "I can manage," Colt said stiffly. Across the street, old Henry Tate slowly stood up from his chair. "Sheriff," he said, straightening as much as his frail body allowed, "I'll help." The sheriff looked pained. "Henry, you know you can't." Henry lifted the rusty Winchester and tapped the barrel. "Boys are coming here for blood. This old rifle's ended men worse than them." No one argued. No one laughed this time. Within minutes, the Crowe Brothers thundered into view, a cloud of dust, black hats, murderous eyes. They rode in with confidence, pistols drawn, shouting threats. "Dry Creek," the oldest Crow hollered. "Bring out the sheriff. We got unfinished business." Sheriff Wilcox stepped into the open, shaking. "What?" Colt followed reluctantly. And then Henry stepped forward too, standing between them like a lone dead tree refusing to fall. The Crows laughed when they saw the old man. "Look at that fossil," one jeered. "He's gonna croak before he pulls the trigger." Colt felt his stomach twist. He found himself speaking before he could stop. "Leave the old man be. You're here for the sheriff, aren't you?" The oldest Crow's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" The name seemed to mean nothing to them yet. But Henry gave Colt a long, unreadable look. The leader smirked. "Step aside, kid. We ain't here for you." Henry lifted his rusty Winchester. "You're here for trouble. And trouble ends with a bullet." The Crows roared with laughter. One of them drew first. The shot rang out, sharp, loud, echoing through the empty street. The bullet never reached Henry, because Henry was faster. The old man's rusty rifle cracked with a thunderous boom that seemed impossible from such a relic. The bandit who'd fired first toppled off his horse before anyone realized what happened. 4 Crows remained, and suddenly, nobody was laughing. Chaos exploded. Gunfire erupted up and down the street. Windows shattered. Horses screamed. Colt tried to fire back, but panic clawed at him, the same panic that had haunted him for years. His shots went wide. He ducked behind a watering trough, heart pounding, breath shaking. He saw Henry out of the corner of his eye standing firm in the open like he was carved from stone, firing slow, deliberate shots. A third slumped over his saddle. The fourth tried to retreat. Wounded, but the bullet caught him in the leg. Only the leader remained. Colt realized with a sinking feeling that Henry's breaths were ragged, his hands trembling more with each shot. Age was catching up to him fast. But the old man refused to back down. The leader, Crowe, blood on his sleeve, fired again and again, bullets tearing into the dirt at Henry's feet. Colt saw it. The old man was losing strength, slowing down. The next bullet would kill him. Colt moved without thinking. He rose from behind the trough, aimed carefully this time, not with fear, but with something like purpose. The leader, Crowe, dropped from his horse. Silence rolled over the town like a blanket. Henry Tate fell to one knee, gripping his rifle. He coughed, smiling crookedly. "Reckon I'm too old for this. You saved the whole town," Colt said breathlessly. Colt swallowed hard. "How'd you do it, Henry? That rifle? That aim?" The old man looked down at the battered weapon. "This Winchester belonged to my brother. He died young, saving me from a gang worse than the Crows. Kept it, not to brag. To carry his courage with me." Colt stared at the rusted barrel, the same relic he'd mocked hours earlier. Henry touched Colt's shoulder. "This rifle took 45 lives, but it also saved twice as many. Tools ain't what matter. It's the heart behind him." Colt felt a strange warmth in his chest. Humility. "Henry," he said softly, "will you teach me? Not just shooting, but how to stand like you did today." "I'll teach you, son. But first, help me stand up." The townsfolk emerged from hiding, cheering, clapping Henry on the back, thanking Colt for stepping up.